What if giving up alcohol was the key to turning up the volume on your real voice? Today's guest went from hiding behind the noise to boldly owning her story, and now she helps others to do the same. Get ready to hear how sobriety can be your secret weapon for showing up, standing out, and speaking louder than ever.
Welcome to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. You may have made the decision not to drink alcohol, or at the very least, not at work-related events. Whether you've never been a drinker, are in recovery, or made a health-related decision, we see you, and you are not alone. In today's world, networking, socializing, and celebrations often happen over drinks, and the struggle can be real. Through this podcast, we're changing that narrative. We're here to create a community where individuals like you, who choose not to drink or drink less, can find camaraderie, support, and practical advice.
Before we get started, Sober Life Rocks is hosting our conference, Amplify Sober Voices, on January 15th, 2026, where we're bringing together influencers, speakers, writers, podcasters, really thought leaders to reimagine what a truly inclusive alcohol-optional world would look like. And if you're interested in being part of this growing movement that we're seeing, we'd love to have you join us. Learn more at amplifysobervoices.com. Welcome back to the Sober Life Rocks podcast, where we amplify sober voices from around the world. I'm your host, Margie Schaller, and today's guest is a powerhouse in pink who's not afraid to disrupt the rules of business, branding, or sobriety. Samantha Parker is a social media strategist, video marketing expert, and unapologetically bold entrepreneur who helps brands show up and stand out without shrinking to fit somebody else's mold. As the founder of the Samantha Parker, she guides clients in turning real-life stories into content that connects and converts. But what makes Sam's voice so powerful isn't just her strategy, it's her story. As a sober business owner and podcast host of her own, she's using her platform to challenge the idea that alcohol is required for confidence, creativity, or success. And today we're going to dive into how this has helped her build her business and what it looks like to take up space online without the filter of alcohol, and why owning your story might be the most rebellious branding move you can make. Sam, welcome to the program.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. And that was an incredible introduction.
Oh, good. Well, you are an incredible person. So just to start off with, let's get to know you. Tell me a little bit about your story, who you are, and where kind of your life came to the point where sober choices became your choice.
Oh, I like that. Sober choices became your choice. Well, it kind of felt like it wasn't a choice. Was like, do this or continue down the path and cycle the same stuff over and over again. So I've been sober for a little over a year now, and I think it completely changed my life. And specifically, like, it completely changed my business. And you know what's so funny is when I got sober, I was worried that it was going to destroy my business. Isn't that funny? Like how we think that, like, we're going to have no friends, or at least these were my thoughts. My family's going to hate me. I'm going to have no friends. My business is going to go down the tank. And it's been completely the opposite.
So back me up a little bit to kind of what was your upbringing like, and how did drinking become part of your norm?
Yes. So my upbringing was probably a little colorful, but I feel I got a lot of life skills out of it, like I can drive a stick and shoot a deer. So, but alcohol was always very present in my childhood. My parents drank. And I always am like, that's, their thing. I think when I focus on sobriety, like I like to think about like the choices I made as an adult, but I did start drinking at 17. And one of the big things was I was trying to cover up and numb the pain I had gone through. So I went through something like not super fun at all, where basically like my mom had kicked me out and I'd gone to live with my dad. And there was just a lot of toxicity in that, whole dynamic. And I felt like I didn't have a home anymore. And so I started drinking to kind of fill that void.
And then tell me about how that sort of progressed throughout your adult life.
Yeah. So started heavily drinking at 17. I loved that. I loved when you could just like black out and forget it. Like I absolutely loved it. And it didn't matter like how sick I was the next day. I just like, when was the next time that I could do that? And so it definitely like 100% progressed. I did find myself pregnant at 19. So, I obviously I didn't drink while I was pregnant, but as soon as I had that baby, like I right back to drinking. And my daughter, she's now 20, but it was like it just kept going. There was a lot of pain from being a teen mom right there. Was in a very abusive relationship. And so alcohol again became my best friend to numb all that pain that I was going through.
And do you think that this was sort of part of what was normal, or what did you know that it was a problem?
So I think the first time that I realized it was a problem, of course, I think I always knew it was a problem, but I was like, oh, I'm young. That's what everyone does. And of course, I'm really good at surrounding myself with people who are also like me so that I can be like, oh, look at them. I'm very good at virtue signaling. I'd be like, oh, look at them. They got like drunk last night and puked so that I could make myself look better. So a lot of it's who you surround yourself with. And so I was surrounding myself with people that were like me. And then, of course, like, I would just drink it off the next weekend. So I really didn't realize that it was a huge problem until I was actually 29. And at that point, I had been married, like remarried, because I did get married when I was 19 when I had my daughter. These are the things that I don't usually talk about, Margie. But I did get pregnant. So I got remarried again to a great guy and had another baby, but we'd relocated to like the different side of the state. And at 29, we went to a Christmas party. I got super drunk, blacked out, and cracked my head. I actually have a skull fracture right here. So I got to spend all of those Christmas holidays, like, have you seen like old ladies when they fall on their faces? That's
Mm-hmm.
what I looked like. Yeah. So, and my job was like, I can't believe you're coming into work looking like that, and it was mortifying. People were like, did your husband hit you in the face? And it was, I was always like trying to come up with a story. I
Mm.
remember both my grandparents were like, what in the world has happened to you? So that was like a big one. And I remember actually calling my mom and saying, I think I need to go to AA. And she's like, you don't need AA. You just got too drunk. I heard that you had a cold and that you'd taken cold medicine and that's a bad combo. And my aunt was like, you're fine. Like she even had come over throughout the night because she was afraid I was like not going to make it through the night. She's like, I didn't want you to throw up and aspirate. But like they both still were like, you don't have a drinking problem. Don't go to AA. But then it took me
Wow.
another decade to make it into AA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oof. Okay. So during this time, you're a mom and a wife and building a career. So what kind of work were you doing over these years?
In my early years, I was working as a CNA, so I would work in different hospitals, and I did hospice for a long time. When I fell and hit my head, though, we had moved to St. George, Utah, and I was working in a floral shop. So I had it. Oh, but I was also going to college full time. So that was kind of interesting too. College full time, two kids, and working full time.
These are the things that I think that we do to run from ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We fill our lives so full of so much that we can't even take a breath. And then we're exhausted and we deserve to have that drink at the end of the day.
Oh, any excuse. It was a good day. It was
Hmm.
a bad day. It doesn't matter.
Hmm. So then what precipitated you actually getting sober a year ago?
So, well, I mean, it's like the combo of all those things I was talking about, and even looking back to when I was 29. But, a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, what happened? Like, did you get a DUI? I live in a smaller area and they were like, we looked at the bookings and didn't see you. I was like, what?
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Um, and I was like, no, I didn't get a DUI, but I absolutely should have. But there was a couple things that had happened like the weeks leading up to me finally having my breakdown. One of them was my daughter had gotten a minor consumption ticket and she was just at a college party. She was in college. And, at the time I was like, it really like, you'll work through it. We'll figure this out. But I got really, really drunk. Like, I don't remember any of this and told her how disappointed we were. So can you imagine like a drunk person telling, another person like shame on them for getting an alcohol ticket? And I was so drunk. We have this little old Chihuahua. I guess I fell on the dog and like hurt the dog. She's fine, but
Mm.
The next day, you know how like you go through the shame and guilt cycle of the next day, you're hungover. I mean, I constantly did that. I did that several times a week, but this one really hit me. Like I had said some things that like I don't feel like anyone should ever hear their mom say to them. And
Mhm.
even though I apologized and I was like, this is not how I feel, I was like, I can't take that back. Like those things have been said and that damage has been done. And that like really was just like not sitting with me well. But of course, as we do, I was like, oh, I'll just have some drinks to think about this. And I think it was a week and a half to 2 weeks later, a friend invited me over on a Sunday. And this is again, you guys, this is the drunk in me. We make horrible choices. But my friend was like, hey, come over to the pool. Like, I've got some tequila. She's like, just come over and hang out. And I was like, oh, well, my son he's really sick. It turned out he had COVID, and I was like, you know what? I deserve this. I've just been home all week taking care of him. My husband can handle it. But I had called a home health nurse to come over and get him some IV fluids. So I left to go to this. Yeah. See, yeah, I left to go to this pool party, and got completely like belligerently drunk. It was like decided to drive home, which I wish I would have been pulled over that day. It's like one of the things I regret so much. I really don't remember driving home. I get home, my husband's in the garage and he's like, did you just drive home? And I'm like, oh yeah, da da da, and he's like, he's mad. And I go in and the nurse was there giving my son IV fluids. And I go in and I'm talking to her. I walk out and I hear her say, what's wrong with your mom? And my son just goes, oh, my mom's drunk again.
Mm.
And that was the last time I ever had a drink.
Wow.
Yeah.
Out of the mouth of babes.
Yes.
Okay, so now you're sober, and tell me, when did you start being a social media strategist?
Yeah. So I've been a social media manager and content creator since 2015. So I've been doing this for over a decade.
But
Which
what changed?
in this last year?
Yeah.
Yeah. So originally, like I hit it that I was going to AA and I didn't talk about it for like going up online. I stopped making my posts. I just like totally, which is good. I think sometimes you do need to go internal. And then I finally came out at like 8 weeks. I got a friend of mine to record a podcast with me, because she quit drinking too. Her circumstances were different. She's like, I just didn't like the way it made me feel. But so I decided to record this podcast and put it out on my podcast. And I was like, hey, I'm an alcoholic and I'm 8 weeks sober. And what I thought would happen was that everyone was going to be like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to have clients cancel. Like I'd really prepared myself for that. And it was the opposite. Everyone was like, that is so amazing. Like, and some people were like, I had no idea you were dealing with that. But what has happened is like clients have been like, it is so amazing to see this version of you. Like everyone is just happy for you. And I've actually had a lot of people reach out to me and they're like, you've changed, your energy is just so different. We want to work with you. And so it's changed like so much. Plus the other thing too, do you have this like, I feel like you can set goals when you're sober and then you'll actually like achieve them. It's some sort of miraculous thing. You don't like get drunk and like forget that you were going to the gym.
Yeah. The our assistant who writes our blogs or our emails just wrote me and asked me what has been the biggest impact of being sober. And I had to stop and think about it. And I thought the first thing that came to mind is choices. Like I lived my life when I was drinking from just handling this chaos to that chaos, from handling this crisis to that crisis, to just managing to show up and like get through my day. And I used to wonder, how do other people do life? That it doesn't, they don't look like they're so stressed out like I am. And when I got sober, all of a sudden it was like, well, it took a while, but then the fog cleared and I'm like, oh, I actually have choices in my life. I don't
Yes.
have to do these things, or I can not say these things, or I can accomplish these things, and I get to make these choices. It was shocking to me that I didn't know that.
Well, and I think a lot of that is because your choice was always reaching for a drink, and
Mm-hmm.
the choice was already made for you, even if you didn't realize it. At least for me, that's how it was.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you talked about that people notice the difference, but what did you notice in terms of yourself and how you not only do your business, but how you show up out loud? since you've talked about this publicly?
Yeah, I think the most thing that I've noticed is like nothing is really that big of a deal. I'll have something happen. I had like a little family crisis yesterday and I was like, oh, that's okay. Like I can handle it. It felt like a really big deal yesterday. And today I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. Like we're just going to move through this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like probably the biggest thing I've noticed is
Mm-hmm.
I think like, and there's part of me that will stop and go, well, shouldn't this be a bigger deal? Like, don't you think you should start some drama and call so-and-so? You know what I mean? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like peace, it's peace.
That's amazing.
Because life is still going to happen, like someone could get in a car wreck, like life is still lifing, but it just feels so much more peaceful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I want to pivot and talk a little bit about sort of your social media um, uh, expertise and the things that you do. When you like, I've spent some time with you and I've spent some time on your website, and you just are bold and big and out there. And I absolutely love that because like I was raised to make myself small and like nobody look over here. And then as somebody who started to drink, it was of course like, don't look at this, just look at this carefully curated exterior that I have.
Mhm.
And it's taken me some a lifetime really to undo some of those messages. So how do those of us who have that programming, what does that mean to show up big and bold and unapologetic?
Well, the thing is you just actually have to do it. Like it's a muscle. You know what I mean? Because there's so many times when I'm like, oh, just be really safe to like hide. But I'm like, no, I said I want this goal and I know that these are the steps to get there. So like for you, for example, right? You want to spread the message, you want your podcast to grow, you want other people to see it and like have it be a lifeline. So I always look at it as this. I'm like, okay, so she's telling me she wants to reach this, but she's not willing to do like make the post that's like actually her telling about her day. You know what I mean? And so it's for me, I have to look at my life. And of course, getting sober made this even more clear, where I have to look at it and be like, oh, Sam, you said you wanted this. But in order to get there, you have to do this. And it looks like you're not doing that. So the only person I can blame if I'm not being big and bold at the end of the day is myself. And I'm just
Hmm.
not willing to do that. So that's one thing is I take radical accountability. And if I'm not showing up as me, then what am I doing? I'm not going to reach that point I want to get to. And that's just like a very like realistic fact for me.
So let's just play this out.
Mhm.
Coach me. What are some tips that you would give me as to how to do that better?
You just have to start. But I always tell people if you're not like it's completely uncomfortable, you're not going to do it. You know what I'm saying? But you have to also be like, is it uncomfortable because I just want to hide, or is it uncomfortable because it doesn't even make sense to my life? So, for example, like just specifically with social media, like if I came to you and I was like, hey, I want you to vlog your whole day, that's what's going to make you famous. I need to see from the time you wake up to go to bed, like this other girl over here does on social media. I'm assuming that's not realistic for you. Like to me, that's like nails on a chalkboard. Um, so you have to figure out like what you're good at and double down on that. And so I think the less like you look around on social media too, and you look at like, what am I actually really good at? And it sounds like you're really good at like showing up and talking like on this podcast. So I'd be like, okay, well, like every day, can you spend 5 minutes and share a message talking to the camera? Is that something you could do? And I think it is, and it would
Mm-hmm.
push you a little bit, but it's
Mm-hmm.
you showing up. Like I can sit down. I love to like sit down on TikTok and like just eat my breakfast and like talk about my thoughts for the day, or I'll have like a drink, I'll be like, have you guys tried this poppy? Like that's me. So you have to figure out like what's you and then just keep doing it. And it's a muscle. The more you do it, the better you get. I feel like everyone can relate to fitness. So I always just use that as an example. I'm like, I'm like, everyone knows like if you want to reach certain goals, like if you want to run, you have to go out and actually run. And like the more you run, the better you get. Same thing with like showing up.
I love that so much and what you said because over the course of my career, I've worked with various different marketing teams or social media people, and they'll ask me to do things that you may as well ask me to be a chicken. Like I don't even understand the words you're saying, let alone how to do it. I feel awkward. I feel uncomfortable. But what I heard you say was, don't do that because it won't be you.
Yes, exactly.
but the things that are you, do them a lot.
Yes. And it's like the more you do them, the more you will come out in them. Your first
Yes.
few videos are going to be like cringy. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And you'll want to delete them because you'll see someone else talking on the internet who's really smooth and fluent and has all these likes and engagement. And it's like, but you don't, you just don't, you just put it out there and you move on. But like
Yeah.
the further along you get, you'll learn to tweak things. You'll learn to like just chill and really get into what feels like you.
I love that. So bringing it now around to people who are listening who maybe they haven't felt comfortable sharing their sober journey, or maybe they have sort of dropped little hints here and there, but it's time. It's time they want to amplify their voice online. They want to become authentic and talk about that, but maybe they're afraid of saying the wrong thing or being too much or being judged. Like, what advice would you have for that?
Yeah, I thought about that a lot at first, right? Because, the majority of my family drinks. And I was like, I don't ever want them to feel like bad that they're drinking. You know what I mean? Like that, those are their own personal choices. This isn't me being like the alcohol police. And I mean, it was hard because sometimes I'm like, oh, what if they see that and they think that like, I think this thing of them. It was just a weird thing I had in my head, right? And then I was like, well, they can just unfollow me. I'm like, it's okay if like my family and my friends unfollow me. I'm like, I'm talking to someone else who really needs to hear what I have to say. And, just like if you all of a sudden you have a friend who gets like super into, I don't know, raising plants and you hate plants, like you're probably just going to mute them, while they're going through, like, it's fine. Like they're not talking to you, they're talking to someone else who they're looking for people to relate to. And so that's
Mhm.
kind of just the motto I took was I'm like, you can just mute me or unfollow me. These are imaginary conversations in my head too. So
Mhm.
no
Mhm.
one's ever been like bothered by me sharing my story, but it does feel scary. It absolutely does feel scary. But I look at it like this, like, so I'm a high functioning alcoholic. And I was doing really well, like people were like, your life looks really great. We had no idea you were suffering so much. And I'm like, yeah, I put out a really great front. But I would have loved to seen someone like me talking about the things they were going through. That's actually why I love going to AA is because, like some woman will share a story and I was like, oh my gosh, I went through that. And so to me, I'm like, someone else needs this. And once you start talking about it, you will. I get so many messages a day on TikTok, like just stuff too, where it's like, thank you for sharing that. Like I'm not alone. And I think that's what matters. I think as humans, that's what actually matters. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
like maybe, someone in your close circle is like, oh my God, what is she talking about? It doesn't matter. You're not talking to them.
People say the recovery is not abstinence from alcohol, it's community.
I would like that a lot.
Hmm. And I think that that's really the whole thing is that I I'm a little older than you. And so for me, it was all about like thinking about what I'm going to say and having this whole script in my mind and then, saying it perfectly and retaping and retaping. And what I am seeing is so much more impactful for me is literally the idea that I'm talking to somebody who needs to hear me.
Yeah.
And that when I'm watching other people, it's like, oh, I needed to hear that. And so we become much more conversational, we become much more natural. And if sharing our sober story is something we're comfortable doing, then yeah, it's a conversation.
hmm It is. And everyone has a vice too. So it could be food, it could be, numbing out, scrolling on social media every day, video games, like everyone has something. And so
Mm-hmm.
I even tell people, I'm like yesterday was a shitty day for me. It was a giant turd. And I was like, hey, I'm having a bad day, but here's how I'm going to deal with it without alcohol. I was like, I'm getting my workouts done, even though it's 8 p.m. I felt so good too after all of that. But I was like, these are the things I'm doing instead of numbing with alcohol. I'm taking care of me. But that relates to all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying, like people just need to hear your story. So it's like, even though they might that day, this is another thing, you guys, is like, it might not be someone who listens to you that is specifically struggling with alcohol. Because I get these messages too, people who struggle with food or whatever. And they were like, that message was so spot on and that helped me.
Mm, that's amazing. Okay, I want to talk about Amplify. So, Amplify Sober Voices is our conference that we're holding in January, and you are going to be our social media maven. And I want to hear from you, like, what are you excited about this conference, and why have you agreed to join our team with this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I think that more people, you guys are really helping like the thought leaders put this out there and share their sober stories. And I think that there needs to be more of that. That needs to be more normalized. And I think we're definitely getting there. I would say like in the last few years, the sober movement is big. But you're giving people space and helping them get their voices out there. And to me, I'm like, that is so important. And then the second thing is, I think it'll be really fun, to meet other people that are like you, going through the things that you're going through and meeting up in person. I think it's going to be big. But I would just love to see this as a ripple, It's like one person shares their story, it gives another person hope to share their story. And, hopefully, you don't have all these people who've suffered for years in the dark.
Absolutely. So, tell everybody some of the things that you're going to be doing with us.
So, well, I think we're still working on it, right? But we're going to do the social media lounge. So we'll be doing like live interviews, and I'm like, this is cool. I can just see it playing out in my head, and I think it's going to be so fun. So that I'm super pumped about that. I'm excited to also come in and help you guys with your social media as well. So you guys can spread your impact and maybe like just even take a little bit of pressure off of you as well. So you can work on the event, because it's a lot of work to do social media.
It is. It is. And so if there's anybody listening who is thinking about coming, sign up, register, and then we want to feature people who are coming. Like, we'll definitely, we're making social media posts for you, because every person coming is a thought leader. Every person coming is an influencer. Every person coming has some sort of impact on a community. And so we want to also give you social media assets so that you can promote this and spread the word to your community, because the more, it's the ripple effect, just like you said, the more that people know, the more that people know, the more that people know, and then coming together, imagine what we can do together.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. And you guys are going to be in Florida. Who doesn't love going to Florida?
In January, especially.
Oh, I know, right?
I know. And then the other thing that I think about this conference that I'm excited for you to be part of is that I feel like as entrepreneurs, as coaches, as speakers, podcasters, it can be lonely. It can feel like you're just doing all the things all by yourself. And so we want to feed the leaders. We want to have this be a place where you feel enriched and excited and filled up and have more knowledge and resources. And so I'm excited for people to meet you, because you have so much to offer and so many amazing things that you can teach people and share with people and potentially collaborate with them going forward. So cannot wait to have you there.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a great time.
Absolutely. Okay, one more question. I heard that you like making extravagant cocktails. And yet you don't drink. So tell me how you navigate going to these events and not drinking and still having that be part of your life.
Oh my gosh, I actually have some really good tips for this, because I had to figure that out quickly, even at like backyard barbecues, but especially like at big events, I would be at these like women's events, and they had done like this huge happy hour, and I'm like, oh my God, like your brain starts tripping. So I like to give my brain a little job. And the one thing I always tell people is have a drink in hand. So I will always like be like, right now, even doing this podcast, I have a drink. That to me, it's that fixation. So if I know I have a drink, I'm okay. So I'll always have like a Diet Coke. I will always have like a sparkly water. I will walk around with my own drink in hand. If I'm like somewhere like, we did a girls trip and we went to a big resort with a pool, and I walked over to the bar and I said, I want this club soda in the same glass as my friends, please. And thank you. I was very like assertive about it, because I wanted that. Like, I don't know, it just made me feel like I was part of it, but I do not want alcohol in my life whatsoever. So that's one big thing for me, is like always have a drink in hand. So especially when you're going to these corporate events, it's like, just grab a club soda with some lime. That's a big one for me, is to always have a drink in hand. And the other thing too, is like, I'll just leave. I leave like all the time. Do you do that?
I do. Absolutely. I'll stay for the first 30, 45 minutes of a networking event. And then as soon as I see people sort of beginning to get a little sloppy, it's like they're not going to remember the conversations we're having anyhow.
No, they don't remember you leaving because they only care about their drinking,
Yeah.
speaking from my own personal experience.
Hmm.
But sometimes too, even leaving, like maybe I'll just be in the bathroom, like on social media for 15 minutes. Like if I can't actually leave, I'm like, I'm just going to remove myself for a little bit. And it's really empowering.
Yeah. But that being said, I will say that I have so much fun, like that I remember when
Mhm.
I am going to some of these things and I'm feeling good about myself and I'm feeling filled up and like I'll go dancing or I'll, hang out at a comedy bar or just have a ball. So it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I'm always just going back to my room. It just means that depending on how I'm feeling in the moment and what the circumstances are that I'm in, I have choices, just like back in the beginning of the conversation. I can choose to take care of myself whatever way that looks like.
Oh, and it's like the best. And you know what the best part is too, is like the next day you never feel stupid. Because it's funny because people are like, I drink to take the edge off so I can socialize, but they don't realize that they're just causing themselves a bunch of anxiety because they always feel stupid.
Some people, yes. Yeah.
I did. That was the
Yeah.
name of the game for me, was guilt and shame.
Yeah. Well, anything else that you wanted to share that I didn't already ask you?
No, I am so like grateful to be on your podcast. I love it. Thank you for spreading your message. Thank you guys for how hard you're working to put together, an incredible, huge event. And it's going to be amazing.
Thank you. So, if Sam didn't convince you that living alcohol free can be bold, can be badass, and way more fun, go back and listen again because I feel like she talked about how to become the person that you've always wanted to be. And that's powerful. And if today's conversation lit something up inside of you, do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with somebody else who's ready to amplify their own sober voice. And don't forget, we've talked about Amplify Sober Voices. Tickets are on sale right now. And if you want that kind of community, inspiration, and real conversations like this one, you'll want to be in that room. You can get the details at amplifysobervoices.com. Until next time, keep showing up, stay bold, and remember, sober life rocks because you rock.